President Kennedy's final 4 hours began this morning at Fort Worth's Carswell Air Force Base. He and Mrs. Kennedy had just attended a breakfast of the Fort Worth Chamber of Commerce. At the airport in Fort Worth, before taking off for Dallas, the Kennedys, as they have been prone to do all along on this Texas trip, went to the fence railing to shake hands with well-wishers and to allow some pictures to be taken. The President and Mrs. Kennedy both had looked particularly refreshed and rested yesterday during their trip to San Antonio and Houston, and again this morning as they started to leave Fort Worth. Democratic congressmen accompanying the President on his trip were right behind him and Mrs. Kennedy. And the two boarded Air Force One at Carswell Air Force Base for the 30-mile air trip from Fort Worth to Dallas. It had been a rather gray morning a little bit earlier in the day as a cold front moved across Texas, and there had been some rain. Laden skies and that little bit of rain were giving way to brilliant sunshine just about, an hour before the President's scheduled arrival time at Dallas's Love Field. This was the crowd at Love Field, a particularly large greeting crowd. It was described that way by Dallas police and Mayor Earl Cabell. It's ironic that the rain stopped before the President's arrival in Dallas. Had it continued raining, a bulletproof bubble top which fits over the sleek presidential convertible would have undoubtedly been used today and possibly would have prevented the assassination. But as the sunshine broke through, President and Mrs. Kennedy arrived in Dallas to be greeted by a line of local dignitaries. A very enthusiastic crowd was on hand. Local reporters who've covered many of these gatherings called it one of the largest airport greetings in Dallas history. Mrs. Kennedy was given a bouquet of roses. Mrs. Kennedy seemed to enjoy shaking hands with the local populace a bit more today than she did yesterday in San Antonio and Houston, when there were times yesterday when Mrs. Kennedy appeared to be a little ill at ease. This morning she was all smiles and very warm in her greetings, as was the President. Of course, the President used to such occasions. The President spent what seemed to be a rather long time at the Dallas airport making sure that he shook hands with everyone who was on hand there. As far as the dignitaries were concerned, always taking time, of course, to introduce his wife. Because of the rather long time spent at the airport, the President was a bit late at getting started on his motorcade through downtown Dallas. They took time out at the airport to greet an elderly lady who said she had lived 69 years without shaking hands with the President. She got her chance today. The Secret Service, all during this Texas trip, had been allowing photographers and newsmen, local press, as distinguished from the White House news contingent, to work very closely around the President and Mrs. Kennedy. The presidential couple went again to the fence railing in Dallas to greet the well-wishers, departing from the course marked out for them by Secret Service people. But of course, President Kennedy had made something of a reputation as a man who liked to break away and shake hands with well-wishers and the crowds who gathered to see him. These are some of the last close-up pictures taken of President Kennedy. He was literally mobbed as he and Mrs. Kennedy went to that fence railing at Love Field. The crowd at the Dallas airport was, to a large measure, a young crowd. The teenage group, which played such a prominent role in President Kennedy's 1960 campaign. Youngsters of the teen age were very much in abundance at the airport. Mrs. Kennedy carried with her the entire time at the airport the roses that had been given to her. Then the presidential couple entered the open Lincoln convertible in which they rode